Across the state, there is a growing grassroots movement in support of local government and the rights of community members to determine the future of their own councils. And this movement is directly in opposition to the coalition government's so-called Fit for the Future agenda. This opposition is proving what local communities, councillors and the Greens have been saying all along, that the Fit for the Future agenda isn't about the fitness of local councils at all, but rather it's a push to force amalgamations by stealth and take the democracy out of our most grassroots level of government. While IPART is busy developing its methodology to assess local councils' fitness, we've already heard from this government about minimum population sizes of 250,000 or more residents, as well as arbitrary figures literally plucked out of the air by senior ministers on just how many councils that Sydney and New South Wales should have. Whilst the government has been pushing this amalgamation agenda, it has comprehensively failed to produce a compelling business case, let alone a decent shred of evidence that supports the basic principle that bigger councils are in any way better. People are not fools. They know from experience that when they access services from ever larger organisations, whether it's their bank or their government, they get less personal service, higher costs and less of a say. When it comes to local government, these anecdotal concerns are exactly matched by the available evidence. And the evidence is clear, that compared to our major international competitors that this state's metropolitan councils are, if anything, too large. Research undertaken by the Greens New South Wales shows that on average, the population of Sydney metropolitan councils is already 4 times larger than the average council size across the OECD. Indeed, the average population of local councils across our direct competitors, those that we most often compare ourselves, that is the developed world represented by the OECD, the average population is 27,224, while the average population of the 41 metropolitan Sydney councils is 104,493. This research calls into question the push for local council amalgamations from the Liberal government and their friends in the business and development lobby. We are seeing a concerted push from developers and their mates, their senior mates in the Liberal government, to supersize Sydney councils. That's despite the evidence, if anyone bothered to look, that our councils are already vastly bigger than the global average. And this is despite the fact that only 2 of the 41 Sydney metropolitan councils are below the average size of OECD councils, and a staggering 17 metropolitan councils in Sydney already serve more than 100,000 residents each. Whether it's Randwick Council at 137,000 residents, Mossman at 29,000 or Fairfield at 196,000, all of which are slated for merger by this government, Sydney's councils are already substantially bigger than their average global counterparts. A loss of local autonomy, a loss of local democratic control and ultimately a loss of legitimacy is a case study in exactly how not to do reform. So what is the answer for strengthening local government to ensure that councils are sustainable and viable for the future? Well, at the heart of local government should be strong, vibrant councils, led by elected representatives drawn from their local community, whose prime focus is delivering community leadership, democratic decisions, quality services and long-term infrastructure for their local areas. Rather than imposing unwelcome amalgamations on unwilling local communities, the reform agenda should be focused on how we can empower local communities, what we can do to ensure greater fiscal and regulatory autonomy for local governments, free them from the dead hand of this state government. Merging 2 financially struggling councils is only going to make the problem bigger. We need to be looking to evidence-based solutions that will improve funding arrangements, put an end to decades of cost shifting, end rate pegging, and allow councils the autonomy they need to determine their own rates based on their local needs and priorities. Local government exists for the community. Residents working closely with their local councillors must have the right to determine what goes on in their community in terms of planning, in terms of development, service delivery, but also, and crucially, if and when an amalgamation should occur. Local communities, not Macquarie Street, should be deciding how they are represented at a local level. And survey after survey has ultimately shown that local communities do not want their councils to be swallowed up and spat back out as super councils. The Greens will continue to stand with local councils and local communities in their campaign to strengthen local democracy and keep local government genuinely local, because we believe that the best answers for local government reform will be found at a local level and not on Macquarie Street.